Oh, banger.
Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at simbody.com. You're really, really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks Kicks.
And just like that, we're back, we're set, and go fighting Phils. We have a big-time card coming up today. Jan Blachowicz taking on Alexander Rakic in that main event slot. And another light heavyweight co-main event with Ryan Spann taking on Iwan Kutselaba. As always, one half of your host and duo, Craig Allan. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allan, FNP. With me to my left, to your right, as always, respective socials, Creepy Pete. He is known as Matt Allan. Now, we're looking over there in the comments section, Matt. Dave Woodacre hanging out, saying, getting into it with the Allan Bros. Let's go. Mr. Guy, Craig Hart, Sean MMA, Joe, Paul, just my 2 cents, Prince Vegeta's son, Matt Simone, Quack the Duck, Chris Mo, Diddley, Starsmith, Professor Chris, John Hansen, Kurtar. Matt, there's a lot of people out there.
How we doing, everybody? Hopefully you guys are half as excited as we are for the fights, because I know we are both probably too excited for this Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic main event. This honestly is a pay-per-view quality main event. I know that's a weird thing to say, but Rakic for a long time was kind of in that he's half a number one contender spot while Jan Blachowicz was champ. And I know Glover himself had that crazy run. He was able to get the title, but realistically, we could have seen these two guys fight for a UFC title. And I know Jan may have lost maybe a little bit of a step since he was champ, but that wasn't that long ago. And this is still a former champion fighting the brightest prospect we have above 205 pounds. So I think it's going to be a great fight.
All of the comments I've seen this week have been Jan is washed. MMA is all about one fight. You make it or break it, and if you have a bad one, you're done, bud. So that's pretty much what I've seen all throughout this week. Everybody seems to be going with Alexander Rakic, giving me the big L, but I'll take it until we see what happens coming up tonight. But as everybody knows over there in that comment section, everybody that's tuning in so far, because the comment section is filling up, we're going to throw it on over to our fight of the night. Now, we're limited on the amount of fights that we have this weekend, and it's the same thing next weekend, too. You saw that in the preview, the promo. You have Katlyn Vieira and the return of Holly Holm, and on that card, as many fights as there are on this card, there's only 11, so it's turn and burn. But if we throw it on over to our fight of the night screen, and I'll kind of move myself into position here, Frank Camacho, Manuel Torres. I know I'm excited about this one. I see a lot of people out there recently commenting that they like Frank Camacho in this one. And I'd say if Camacho's going to do anything, I mean, maybe he can get it done in the first round, but second round, third round, you know, if his durability stays there, his cardio is quite good, and he can last for 3 rounds. Manuel Torres is like, you know, it's like
the type of fighter Julian Lane would appreciate.
Julian Lane would appreciate him, or a young college guy would appreciate him, because he comes pretty quick. I mean, he is a 13 of 14 of his overall fights are done in the first round. He's 12-2, so from that you can deduce that he's been finished in the first round. Also has a fight that's gone to the distance, the old splitty decision. Matt, can Frank Camacho come back off of this long layoff, off of the injuries, the car accident, get the win? We'll see what happens, but I like this fight.
And exactly, maybe the layoff is a good thing for him. He was the guy who was taking a lot of damage in the ring, and that's something that really does matter. We've seen a lot of fighters, and especially recently, they just don't have the same levels of durability that they once did. Even Justin Gaethje, to a certain level, like, he was someone who could eat anything when he first came to the UFC in his PFL career. And now, as we've seen him in the UFC for a little while, if you do hit him, he will go down at a certain point. And for Frank Camacho, we definitely saw that a couple of years ago before he had his layoff. So maybe this time off will sort of reinvigorate his chin a little bit. And if that is the case, this should be a great fight against Manuel Torres, who, like you said, definitely comes to throw down.
FM, Mo Diddley, William, Chris, all hanging out there over in the chat. Matt, we'll throw it on over to our second pick. Davy Grant taking on Louis Smolka. And if everybody's all over Mr. Alexander Rakic this weekend, everybody and their dogs taking Davy Grant to win by knockout because Louis Smolka got knocked out in his last fight. So listen, whatever happens in your last fight happens in your next fight. We know that. That's what everybody will tell us. Matt hitting up the super chat. Mom took the credit card away. Here's a meal ticket. Look at that. Appreciate that. The old happy birthday to the fiance, Bella. Matt has talked about his fiance.
Bella.
And it's the cat Hans. Is Matt's cat Hans?
We need to know how he's doing.
I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, everybody's talking about Davy Grant to get a win. Mr. Guy saying Davy Grant should not be a minus 300 versus anybody ever. I know Grant's had competitive fights against some good fighters lately. Marlon Vera is one of them. And then, of course, you had Adrian Yanez. Davy Grant was also a bit of a bloody mess after that Yanez fight, but I do like this one. I think it's going to be highly competitive. Gotham Knight hitting us up in the super chat as well. Hans is chilling, so we got that one right. The old recall is still there. I think this is going to be a fun fight while it lasts.
The thing about Davy Grant is we sort of know what we know about him. And I know he had that mid-career revolution of, hey, I'm not just a grappler and I am more of a striker now. And he has shown that when he sits down on his power shots, he might be a little bit older, but he's got big, big power in his hands. And for Smolka, he's a weird fighter to predict. Let's just be honest. It's like if you're playing like a video game or something, they're like, here, drink this. You have a 1% chance to die and like a 99% chance to just make $1 billion. Louis Smolka's that 1% chance. Where you're like, hey, this isn't going to happen. And then, of course, he's going to look really good and probably win by TKO. I think it will be a great fight just because both guys do have peaks and valleys in their style.
Should be a fun one. So we'll flip it on back to that regular card view. And I mean, listen, as you know, Fight Night picks, question mark kicks. Are we going to blow the doors off with Blachowicz and Rakic? Probably not. Are we going to blow the doors off with Holly Holm and Katlyn Vieira? Probably not. But we're going to have some fun doing it. We're going to really try and dig deep into the details of some of these fights. And let us know in that comment section who you have. Make the friends over in that comment section. And we'll get right into it. Because this card kicks off with Nick Maximov and Andre Petroski. And this is another one where the public at the start of the week, the fan vote, everybody going Maximo, but those who laugh loudest laugh last. And I don't know if those are going to be Petroski fans, but I've heard from more of them than I heard anybody on Maximo. And listen, I see it from Chad saying Philly and GSP, love you guys. If you're a Philly guy, you probably have Andre Petroski out of Pennsylvania.
You're probably sad right now that the 76ers just got kicked out of the playoffs.
Matt, Philly represent. And listen, when I do look at this one, you look at these two guys on the scale, Andre Petroski looked great. Like, he looked really, really good. And you know exactly the power that he has. If it carries, I don't know. But his submission abilities definitely do. It looks like he's really started to try and address that gas tank, which was an issue when he took on Aaron Jeffrey, Bellator's finest, and when he took on Brian Battle. Those both kind of evaded him in those fights. Nick Maximo's got a motor on him like a good old, like a Honda. Like a Honda.
A car you can trust. It's not going to impress you all that much, but it's going to get you to where you need to go.
No, not even the cars. Their engines are in everything because they run very well. You're not going to have any knocking. He's just going to go out there, takedown. But if you took these two guys and you tried to sell them, like if you were just trying to sell somebody on Andre Petroski's skill set, his look, and Nick Maximov, I bet you 9 out of 10 people are taking Petroski alone.
The weird thing about this fight is, you had said you heard from a lot of Petroski fans, what, all 5 of them? I don't think Andre Petroski has, like, the biggest fan base in the world. To me, this fight really just comes down to, can Nick Maximov look really good? Because he's been able to win fights at the UFC level, but not a single person is going to cancel their plans to watch Nick Maximov fight. And if I was going to try to sell him to some new MMA fan, maybe they were a big fan in like 2009 to 2012, and they were looking for a new version of Jake Shields.
Whoa. if you really, really like the Bellator 281 main event last night where Logan Storley just...
I don't know if that was worth cutting
held on to MVP, you'd like Nick Maximov's fights.
I would tell them, pump up Jake Shields full of a lot of air, and we have the guy for you. Because again, Nick Maximov is a grappler, but he's not the type of grappler that you would really expect him to be when he comes from that Diaz Academy. When you think Diaz Academy, you think throwing up triangles from your back, being very offensive with your jiu-jitsu. He's a lot more dominant with his positions and his wrestling, and he's someone who's always going to threaten to take your back. He won't always take full advantage of it, but he's always going to be threatening with that one position. But at some point, he's got to get a finish and look really good, because I know I'm not clamoring to see Nick Maximov fight higher-ranked guys fight after fight. Every fight to me is, you need to prove a little bit more. You need to prove a little bit more, then maybe I'll be sold on the total package, because I'll be honest, if Maximov does realize his full potential, if he can get striking, let's say to the level of like a Pat Sabatini, a guy who came into the UFC, not much of a striker, but has definitely made those improvements throughout, then I really do think Maximov could maybe peek into the rankings, get that 14-15 spot, but again, he needs to look more impressive in his fights to actually get people to be convinced that he can get up into those rankings.
What skill have you seen from Nick Maximov in his last 3 fights that make you go, wow, this guy's top 15 potential?
I really do like his ground control. I think that's something that a lot of people are going to struggle with. And again, I don't think it's something that's going to just evolve overnight. It's not something that, wow, you beat Andre Petroski and I'm completely sold on this. I just think that if he is able to get maybe even a Marvin Vettori-like game, because that might be someone whose grappling's a little bit more similar to Maximov's, maybe he could find his way up. And when I say up into the rankings, again, I just mean higher than just sort of this entry level. Because for Maximov, again, remember the whole Nate Diaz, Hamza, you want to fight? Fight my boy over here. That would end in 5 seconds from what we know about Maximov right now. Again, every time in the cage, it's a new opportunity for him to prove something more to us.
I mean, Esteban's saying, how does Maximov go from co-main event to the very first fight in the prelims? Because the last fight sucked. It was terrible. He just laid and prayed on Puna Soriano. Soriano tried to land some shots, but again, it's just like Logan Storley's fight last night against MVP. Logan Storley did 0 with his wrestling, won the fight, but he won no fans. So again, Petroski definitely has a decided edge when it comes to his stand-up. Little bit square, doesn't really throw a lot in volume, but when he does throw, he makes it count. And I saw the question up there earlier asking if Petroski's a Daniel Gracie guy. He is, and as a lot of people pointed out, you know, Daniel Gracie's guys are what, undefeated in the UFC, or it was like 12-0, 13-0 of late. The fans at Fight Night Picks, 79% of them on Instagram have Maximov to win. Both of us had Maximov at the start of the week. But again, when you look at the odds for this, again, we kind of touched on it. Maximov, when we made the video, was around a minus 300. He's a minus 367 right now. Petroski plus 288. Like, if you're betting friggin' Nick Maximov at minus 368...
If you're putting money on this fight, you have more of it than I do.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This fight is not that great in terms of entertainment, but in terms of making a pick, I have Maximov by the slimmest of margins, and if I really clock into my brain here, if 70% implied probability plus is on Nick Maximov, then the smart bet would probably be on Petroski.
Why would anyone put money on this fight, though?
But that's why I'm Fight Night Picks. I'm not Fight Night Bets. I'm going with Maximov.
Yeah, I like Maximov. If he gets Petroski down, I don't think Petroski can get up. Whereas if Petroski takes Maximov down, I still think Maximov will be at somewhat of an advantage. He can sweep. He can get on top. He can then do those things to get into a submission ability to... He can then do the things to get into his own submission ability. Boy, I got tongue-tied there. And I really do think that, again, once this fight hits the mat, for Petroski, if he's on top, maybe he'll have some advantages. But if he gets on the bottom of Maximov, I do expect Maximov to be able to ride out the rest of the round on top.
Yeah, wrestler on the bottom, definitely not a good, plan moving forward. Now, when you really kind of focus in, Matt, and we do this from time to time, especially with the weigh-ins, Rob Font, it was conversation, he missed weight. We ended up switching the pick to Marlon Vera. Then last weekend, the Oliveira scandal, but we kept it with Oliveira. Carlos Candelario weighed in 2 weeks ago for a fight against Tatsuro Taira. Candelario wasn't able to make it, so they rebooked the fight to 2 weeks down the road, being to today. Now, yesterday, Candelario weighed in at 126.5. He was given an extra hour to cut the weight. He did cut the weight and weighed in at 126. And I touched on this 2 weeks ago. I touched on this week. Tatsuro Taira has fought good competition, but he's never fought a guy who can wrestle and pressure like a Carlos Candelario, especially in that opening round. The weight miss scares me for Candelario, just like it did his teammate Rob Font. And when I focus in on this one, I love love the jiu-jitsu out of Tatsuro Taira. I don't necessarily like a guy that likes to get busy from bottom. He is one of those guys at times. And when it comes to the takedowns, you look at it, I mean, Tatsuro Taira, very unorthodox. I don't necessarily like how upper body centric he is because he's kind of like a little Tasmanian devil. He's got a very, very big upper body compared to his legs. And the weirdest part about it for Taira, where I don't worry about his weight at all, he's fought at bantamweight once in his career, spent most of his time at flyweight. He's also taken a fight or two at strawweight as well. So I do still like Tatsuro Taira. He's the 5th Japanese fighter in the UFC currently.
Which is incredible that there's so few.
That is true. I know, who is it, Rin Nakai? A lot of people are talking, is she going to come back?
Maybe? And I know it is different because, again, they have organizations over there, and especially just in Asia, there's Rise and there's One Championship. There are different avenues for fighters to join if they don't want to come to the UFC. It's just surprising that, again, the company that bought Pride in the mid-2000s doesn't have very many Japanese fighters fighting under their banner. I agree with everything you said about Candelario, though. The thing is, I liked Tatsuro 2 weeks ago. I liked him a week ago. I'm not going to change my opinion on his opponent missing weight. Now, if
missed weight, given an hour,
and then given an hour, and then made weight. He looked terrible on the scales, though. I saw a few people mention that in the comments, and I do agree with them wholeheartedly. He didn't look very good whatsoever, and it's not one of those weight misses where sometimes you look at a fighter and you go, okay, you missed by 3 pounds. They didn't look that bad. Maybe they do want a competitive advantage in the cage. I don't think Candelario was trying for that. Like you said, he was given that extra hour. He did actually make the weight in the end, so it's not like he was trying to game the system or anything. I just think he had a really hard weight cut, and especially if he does go into this fight with the mindset of, hey, I have to go in there first round really hard, see what I can do because I know my gas tank might fail me late. I think him getting it into wrestling range is going to make Tatsuro's job so much easier throughout this fight that Candelario, stylistically, this is a really tough fight for him.
I mean, Candelario's a better striker. Zanny Patio, what do you guys see in Tatsuro? Carlos wins in impressive fashion. I don't know Zanny Patio. I mean, I made a 12-minute video on it. I don't know, man. I mean, when I do look at this one, the trouble for me, out of Tatsuro, really great leg kicks, nothing for boxing. Carlos Candelario, very average boxing, not a whole lot for his kicks, good with his takedowns at the start of the fight, but realistically for me, I mean, yeah, I do have Tatsuro Taira, and I really do like the cardio aspect of it, even though he does have some really early finishes. I think he's going to be able to get the win in this one. But again, if you do look at it, Carlos Candelario, a plus 243. And if we have a look at the comeback on Taira, the former Shuto champ, a minus 302 favorite. So again, a guy making his UFC debut, decent favorite being, very, very young in his career. I know he does have quite a few fights, but 85% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with our next Japanese star in Tatsuro Taira at flyweight. 15% back on Candelario. So again, for me, I have Taira. Esteban saying Taira by knockout. I don't see it in the cards for
Unless
him.
It's done by ground and pound, maybe in the second or third round if he's able to get into a dominant position. But on the feet, it's going to be tough because like Craig said, he doesn't have much for boxing. He does have decent kicks when he decides to use them, but there's nothing to set up the kicks. If you're just standing there throwing naked kicks, maybe he gets away with it against Candelario, but let's say he looks really good in this performance and they try to jump him up in the rankings a little bit. Those are mistakes that you're going to get away with now, but as you start to face higher levels of competition, especially at the UFC level, you're not going to be able to get away with them. So I'm really interested to see if Tatsuro can make any improvements fight to fight, because he is still very young in his career, even though he does have a good amount of fights up till this point.
So Pulse Reloaded wants to see Rin Nakai back in the UFC. She's got arms like watermelons, so that's pretty cool. Craig Hart, very little betting value on this card. Taira looks very exciting. I love twitchy grapplers. Probably terrible start the third round on. That could be happening. So, I mean, again, for me, yeah, I'm taking a pop and popcorn approach to the whole damn card because QMK Parlay hasn't been hitting lately. But we'll move on to our next fight, Matt. Virna Jandiroba taking on Angela Hill. And for Virna, somehow she was able to get the knockdown in her last fight against Amanda Ribas. Now, what happened? Virna was on top. Amanda Ribas is in guard. And they played guard for a while. And then they stood them back up. And Amanda Ribas was like on her back foot. And Virna went, you know what? I'm going to club an overhand right. And somehow Amanda Ribas' hands went right here. And she ate a whole overhand right. Fell backwards. Popped right back up. And that was the end of the first round. So it was considered a knockdown for Jandiroba. But then in round 2 and round 3, her offensive output just slowed to a halt, and Ribas was able to take over. And for Virna, she had the fight against Kaneko Murata, and in that one, it was that armbar that popped her elbow at a socket for Murata. After the second round, the doctor came in. He went, let me just feel that a little bit. It's broken. And it was broken. Wow. Kaneko cries. Virna lets out a war cry and yells for Brazil, and she ends up being the winner. So a big TKO win for Jandiroba there. But by and large, I mean, other than her knocking down Amanda Ribas, that came as a surprise to a lot of people. And the Murata, it's a TKO, but it was due to the arm injury. I mean, some pretty interesting stats there for Jandiroba. But I know, again, Angela Hill, we can focus on it. 1 of 4 in her last 5. There's been main events. There's been much bigger names than those who Jandiroba has fought. But when you look at this one, Matt, I know Jandiroba has made these little gains here and there in her striking, but it really is a clash of styles. You got a very, very good grappler against a very good striker. Somebody in our comment section this week said Angela Hill by submission, and I say to that, you're silly. You're very, very silly. So, Matt, what are you saying? So, Pop Pick says Virna by sub, and she's got pop in her punches. Mr. Blister, Adesanya defeat, Young Millionaire, Virna Maximov, and Jan. Kevin saying is Hill over the hill.
Okay, full transparency. We didn't talk about switching any picks or anything before this, but I have a question. Did you think about switching this pick at all?
Not a damn chance.
This is the only fight on the card I kind of thought about, but I'm going to stand firm with Virna. Because here's the thing. It's only going to go one of 2 ways, and I don't think there's any other... Like, to the point that you said, the person who said Angela Hill could win by submission, of course she can't. Just like Virna can't win by, like, standing TKO. Maybe TKO if it's on the ground, but even then, I think the chances are very, very slim. This fight's either going to be a lot of ground control by Virna Jandiroba, or a lot of 1-2s by Angela Hill, and that's about it. It's going to look similar. They're either going to be standing or they're going to be on the ground. If it's on the ground, it should be Virna 100%. If it's on the feet, it probably should be Angela Hill 100%. I don't get caught up too much in the knockdown Virna had against Amanda Ribas. Thank you. Because, again, like you said, it was one of those weird positions. It was kind of an in-between. They were getting back up to their feet. It's one of those positions that really anybody can get hurt in by anybody, just if you get caught by the wrong shot. But I do agree with you. I do think Virna has made some defensive adjustments in her stand-up to where she can get in on the hips a little bit better. This is the only thing I worry about in the fight, though. I think Virna needs to win the first 2 rounds because Angela Hill does have incredible cardio. It's not that I question Virna's cardio. I just don't think she can keep up with Angela Hill with a consistent output for 3 rounds unless she is able to control her for at least an incredible amount of time throughout those first 10 minutes. Like, if we see 7.5 minutes of ground control time by Virna, then okay, Angela Hill's probably going to slow down by the end of the fight. But again, I think this fight's probably going to be one-way traffic, one way or the other. It just really comes down to how confident are you in the takedown defense of Angela Hill or the overall scramble ability of Virna Jandiroba.
Yeah, I mean, if you focus on it, I see Eric over there in the comments section going with a "you can do it" approach, but for Angela Hill, Lemos knocked her down but wasn't taking her down. You had Tisha Torres earning a takedown in that fight. You had the Spider Monkey Yoder got a couple of them. Michelle Waterson got one. You had Claudia Gadelia, Michelle Waterson with a fight booked recently.
Angela Hill always ends up on her back at least once throughout her fights. It just depends on how much time she spends there. I just think she's going to get caught up in the ground, probably a little bit defensively more often than not. But again, if she pops right back up to her feet after every takedown attempt, she's going to be not even just ahead in volume. It's not even going to look the same. Like, when they pull up those numbers at the end of every round, the red for Hill is going to be at, like, 98, and the blue for Virna is going to be at, like, 18 a lot of the times.
Yeah, it's a really, really tricky one. Just my 2 cents saying greasy split. I think Clint over on the Twitterverse was taking, like, this one to go to split or majority decision. Why not? 56% of our fans at Fight Night Picks going with Virna to get the win. I have Angela Hill, and let's have a look at the odds just to have a little bit of fun with it. Virna coming in a way too big of a favorite. I mean, she's around a what? Minus 200 favorite, open to minus 140. Angela Hill, plus 120, plus 166. I like the value on Angela Hill. And I like this fight to go to decision because Angela Hill is not one to really get finished, and Virna is also not really one to get finished. And it's weird because Virna, she got taken down a bunch by Carla Esparza, lost, and then the Mackenzie Dern fight was a bit of a wash. They each kind of showed off their skills in that one. Matt, in this fight, Allan Petrik's picture on the UFC's website does not look like Allan Petrik's picture on our show because Allan decided that when everybody bought in bulk for Platinum Blonde in Charles Oliveira's corner last week, I'm going to buy into this game too. Now, Allan Nascimento did not, although he did have the champ pouring little bits of water into his mouth while he was sleeping when he was cutting his weight. But for Allan Patrick, I mean, he's talking about kissing Dana White's big bald head on Instagram.
Is there a more cocky 1-3 fighter in the UFC?
Well, I mean, he does have a good record. But when you do look at Allan Patrick, lately it hasn't been all that good. It has not been roses, it's been more thorns. And for Michael Johnson, it hasn't really been the top of the thistle plant, that has a flower. It's been more, the awful thistles. Michael Johnson's had a bad run lately. Hasn't looked like the same fighter in the last, 3 or 4 years. Allan Patrick in his last couple of fights has looked bad as well. So, listen, it's the best of the bad. You just have to pick out of it.
Michael Johnson's a lot like Carmelo Anthony. At the start of his career, an all-star. People were excited. He was in main events of fight nights, beating top-tier talent. When you look at the record of Michael Johnson and you don't look at his recent string of fights where he went down to featherweight and he fought Khabib, it's really good.
He's an all-star.
Yeah, like pre-2016, he is an all-star, similar to Carmelo Anthony. But the problem is, with every all-star, you start to slow down. And you have to figure out a new role on every team. Johnson, even though he was losing fights against guys like Khabib and Justin Gaethje and Darren Elkins, he would show off little flashes in all those fights. A lot of people were like, oh, he rocked Khabib after their fight. He definitely rocked Justin Gaethje in their fight. And he had a lot of close fights down at featherweight for a little while. So that was kind of like Carmelo after he went to the Portland Trail Blazers. Still good, still could get the shots up, but definitely not the star he once was. Now Carmelo plays for the Lakers. They're not even a play-in team. They're garbage, and he's not very good for them, if we're all being honest. And I love Carmelo Anthony. Michael Johnson's kind of at that stage of his career, to where if you think Michael Johnson's ever going to look like the guy he once was, it's never going to happen. It just isn't. It's been too long since he has looked like that crisp boxer who could mix in a takedown, be defensively sound, and have a really high work rate, because that was the key to Michael Johnson early on in his career. He wasn't getting hit clean a lot, and he would make you pay with his boxing and his hand speed. I just don't think he can do any of that at this stage of his career, and it sucks to say because, again, Michael Johnson, if you look at him, again, to bring up another sports reference, it's like Evan Longoria. Like, he had a short run where he was amazing, and if he was able to keep that short run going, he'd probably be a Hall of Famer. If Michael Johnson was able to keep that short run of success that he had able to go, maybe he would be able to get into the Hall of Fame. But again, he had too many big key losses, and this last stage of his career has not been good whatsoever.
You gotta look up Longo's stats from last year. He played really well with the Giants. It was a good year for Evan Longoria.
But again, Evan Longoria hasn't been all that relevant since about 2014.
Oh, it was pretty good for him regardless. But when I do look at this one, let's break it down. Striking-wise, Michael Johnson has the edge. He's got crisp boxing. He still has speed, but he doesn't have the pop at the end of his shots that he used to. That's the weirdest part.
Or the setups. There's no jab with Michael Johnson. It's weird. He throws basically a straight left followed by a straight right. It's not a jab that keeps on getting points. It's something that he puts out to almost damage and then follow up with the right. Those are things that you can build upon and then add new tools to.
And for Allan Patrick, he kind of fights like Alex Oliveira. It's a lot of single shots. It's a lot of long motion of movement, and sometimes that gets you caught, especially when you have low output against a guy like Johnson. Especially if you're craning your head back, there's the perfect opportunity to get hit or to get taken down. But Michael Johnson doesn't take people down, he gets taken down. So I do have Allan Patrick in this fight ever so slightly. But again, this is a sketchy fight you stay away from. The fans at Fight Night Picks, 64% of them going with Johnson to get the win over Allan Patrick. So Matt, I've got Allan Patrick.
So do I. And again, I never thought I'd say those words because Michael Johnson at one point was a very, very high-level fighter. He's just not that same guy anymore. And again, desire in the sport does fade at a certain point. And this is a big point they used to bring up, how we saw Michael Johnson in people's corners all the time in Bellator, even in regional shows. Like, Johnson would make these fights the middle of nowhere just to corner someone from Sanford MMA. We haven't really seen that as much lately, so I'm a little bit curious how involved he is. So I do think Allan Patrick's going to win this. But this could be one of those weird fights similar to when Cub Swanson fought Daniel Pineda, and everybody kind of counted Cub Swanson out. He hadn't looked the same for a while, and he looked really good in that fight. So maybe there's a 1% chance Michael Johnson could turn back the clock, but I don't think it's going to be today.
Yeah, I mean, both guys, the future is grim. The future is grim, but you know who the future isn't grim for? Viviane Araujo and Andrea Lee. Now, Matt, I think in your brain you went Angela Hill, Andrea Lee. They're on the same card. Let's mellow those two names and on y va. But when you do look at it for Andrea Lee, obviously great performances her last two times out. Submits Antonina Shevchenko, and if you can beat one, you can't beat the other. I mean, that much is true. But she does go out there last time out and absolutely retires on the stool, Cynthia Calvillo. She looked really good in that fight. She's able to kind of push away the takedown attempt. She's able to piece her up on the feet. For Viviane Araujo, a picture of consistency until it gets into the second round, then she has to rally into the third round. But you do like what you see out of Araujo. Very, very technical boxing out of her, and that's my favorite thing when I do watch an Araujo fight.
My issue with it, though, is there's a lot of peaks and valleys throughout a lot of her rounds, and she will throw really nice combinations, but she doesn't really have active combinations. It doesn't feel like she'll learn as the fight goes on. It feels to me like Araujo's just sort of preset into her combos, and if they land, that's great. And if they don't land, she will struggle as the fight goes on. And at least for Andrea Lee, you might not love everything that you do see, and there are some holes in her game. She does struggle with people who are experts in any one area, because at this point of her career, she is sort of that well-rounded fighter to where whatever strength you have, she'll take it to your weakness and try to exploit it. She's kind of like what Ally Aquinta was for that short little run, like where he was a really good counter to Kevin Lee, but that was about it. I just like the progression that we've seen out of Andrea Lee, because there was a really long time where she wasn't really known for grappling at all. Like, she couldn't get an offensive takedown. She couldn't really get back up to her feet if she was taken down. But at this stage of her career, I just feel a lot more confident in her if she is on the mat, either offensively or defensively. And that's why I do like Andrea Lee in this fight. I think Araujo has the much more eye-catching talent, but this is the wild thing I keep on going back to. She's actually the older fighter in this fight, and Andrea Lee has much more high-level experience. It's not even close.
Yeah, this one is a really weird one. I mean, 51% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have Lee, 49% with Araujo. It is very, very close. Mr. Guy, Araujo looked much bigger and stronger at stare downs. If bigger and stronger people won every fight, I mean, listen, Ken Shamrock would be UFC champ 20 times over. Ken Shamrock, a legend. But I do look at this one as being very, very close, as we mentioned. So the fans pretty well split down the middle on it. If we have a look at the odds, well, the odds are very, very close as well. Lee opened a minus 145 favorite, minus 122 right now. For Viviane Araujo, open to plus 125. She is at a plus 101. So again, very, very close. Chris makes up a good point. Pretty much the whole card should not be touched from a betting perspective. You just wait until next weekend. Have some fun. Pop popcorn. I'm going to be cooking some ribs. So that is going to be a fun night there. I put molasses in my glaze. Molasses in my glaze. Exciting stuff. But yeah, I also agree with you. Taking Andrea Lee in this fight, a little bit more dynamic. I see Clay saying I've got Araujo. Very good boxing. Good in combination. If she can press a pace. Definitely a great option.
Very good at boxing, though. You don't lose to Jessica Ai in a lot of that fight beyond the feet if you're really good at boxing. That's all I'm going to say.
Jessica Ai.
Like Jermel Charlo fights later tonight. He's really good at boxing.
Jake Hadley's taking on Allan Nascimento. A lot of Jake Hadley fans out there this week.
Seen a lot of support for him, too.
I don't love Allan Nascimento's weight cut. Don't love it. Now, I did touch on it at the start of the week, right? We talked about the fact that when you stack up Allan Nascimento and his teammate, Thomas Almeida, Charles Oliveira, all of the guys out of Shoot the Box, Diego Lima, I almost swore there, but effing Allan Nascimento looks bigger than all of them. He's huge. So I am eager to see Nascimento getting into the cage against Jake Hadley, because this is where I see these two guys having decided advantages against one another. Jake Hadley has great wrestling, and you can have a good amateur career and a good pro career like he has, get tagged on the feet, but when he gets tagged and when he gets rocked, like his first Cage Warriors title fight, goes into wrestling mode, and he ends up winning that fight on one of the judges' scorecards, 50-42. You have to be pretty damn good at wrestling to do that, and to really, really just take guys down, grind them out. Nascimento has great jiu-jitsu that can kind of just stifle a little bit of it. Now, Hadley's one of those guys. We talk about it all the time. Position over submission. Hadley can do that. Hadley can take his time.
Jumps the back, though.
Break a guy down and really, really wear on them. Jumped to the back in his fight on Dana White's Contender Series because it was given to him up against the fence. But in other fights out in just the middle of the cage, Jake Hadley can wait, play his game. Nascimento is one of those guys who's going to play jiu-jitsu off his back. He's going to do whatever he can to get the finish. But when it does come down to the striking, and listen, Craig Hart hitting up that soup chat for the great streamer interactions and shoutouts, Allan Nascimento is a way better striker than Jake Hadley, and Jake Hadley does not throw much for volume or in combination very often.
Whatever success Allan Nascimento has in this fight will not be sustainable, or at least I don't believe it will be, and you kind of mentioned it at the start. he had an awful weight cut. I really don't think he looked good on the scales whatsoever. And yes, he was able to make weight, but even if you make weight, you can still have a weight cut. It's like not all significant strengths are created equally. Not every weight make is created equal as well. And for Jake Hadley, this is my point with him taking the back. You're right, he did in the Cage Warriors fight, but this is my point with Jake Hadley. Allan Nascimento is going to be really good at defending takedowns in the middle of the cage, I think. And you're right, he has really good jiu-jitsu. So a lot of what he's going to do defensively is going to be to press Hadley off them. That's going to create a lot of movement on the ground. A lot of that movement is going to get Allan Nascimento back up to the cage. And I do think if he gets back up to the cage, Hadley's a really good fighter at making you expose your back when you're trying to get back up to your feet. He's not somebody who's going to get into your half guard and then immediately go for it. It's more after your explosion to try to get up to your feet. And that's where I do see Nascimento having a hard time. I think early on in the fight, he will be able to keep pace with Hadley. But again, with his overall weight cut and just with both guys' cardio being what they are, like Hadley truly does have exceptional cardio. Like you said, winning a fight 50-42 kind of speaks to that. Like, you don't just beat a guy for a round. You put it on him for multiple rounds. And you really do have to weaponize your pace to have a performance like that. So for me, you're right. Skill-wise, Nascimento might be able to hang with Hadley in a lot of areas. I just do think that as the fight goes on, Hadley will be able to pull away just with his overall cardio.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at that win that Hadley was able to get over Luke Shanks, and you consider the guys that Shanks has fought in the past, especially the fact that did he get finished by Sam Creasy and then finish Sam Creasy right after that? Yeah, but I like Sam Creasy.
The old Uno reverse card. We like that.
And he is a very, very fun fighter. He also has a fight coming up against Josh Reed over there with Cage Warriors. So I think that's going to be fun. Again, Alex saying they're the same exact size, man. Where's your head at? Alex, look at these two guys. They're not the same size, especially tonight when they step in. I know height-wise, reach-wise, whatever, but just look at these two guys when they come in. I like Nascimento with the striking advantage, but again, Jake Hadley, in all honesty, probably going to go out there, take him down, earn a decision win. I don't see him finishing Nascimento. I see this one going late for either guy. I like Nascimento as an underdog, so that's why I'm going with him. I know we're both split on this one. Skywalker DFS, having a good time, saying let's get this bread tonight. Skywalker DFS. I spent the bread on the ribs, so the bread is gone, but it's popping popcorn all night. We'll move into our next fight, Matt, because this one's contentious. Frank Camacho is taking on Manuel Torres. And again, a lot of the commentary this week that I've seen under the videos has been all about Frank Camacho. Now, he was supposed to take on a really, really odd fighter because I don't know if he's championship level or the worst lightweight you've ever seen. But Matt Frivola going out there against Renato Valdez, knocking him down 5 times, or just losing in a wrestling match where he's supposed to have an advantage. But when you look at Frank Camacho, he's supposed to have that fight last year, but he got in a really, really bad car wreck. He had a couple of discs in his back go. He separated his shoulder, so he's been off for another year. That makes it 2 since he took on Justin James. The Justin James era has came and went before Frank Camacho came and took another fight.
We're the only people who remember that era, though.
James lost 4 fights in a row after he beat Frank Camacho. Manuel Torres is a man on fire. He finishes people in the first round. If not, he gets finished in the first round. Only one of his 14 fights has gone the distance. It was a split decision. But again, we saw him look pretty good in his last fight. Really, really crisp with his combinations. Much more reserved. And when he needed to finish the fight, he could. But Manuel Torres in some of his fights, I know he's winning them. But man, he does some meathead stuff. And I like it. I like it. The old guillotine standing.
It's fun to watch.
It's a lot of fun to watch. So I really like this fight. But again, let us know who you're going with, because I can see some people over there. Kenny Williams saying Manuel round 1 or round 2. Kenny Williams also saying fight doesn't go the distance. Dan Goldstein, the crank by sub at plus 1,000. Phoenix talking Alex Gagnon. And we have Sirkin Maz saying Torres won with an eye poke. And One Diamo, Frank should go to BKFC.
No, he shouldn't at all. Here's the weird thing about Frank Camacho. Should just grapple, guys, but never does. And that's my big problem about him in this fight. If Frank Camacho fought this fight like his skill set would suggest he should, then yeah, maybe that sub plus 1,000 is a pretty good prop. Because honestly, his submission ability is quite high level. Frank Camacho is someone who is known for competing in no-gi and gi jiu-jitsu tournaments outside of the UFC just to stay active. Because that was the thing about Camacho. Early on in his career, he was having these fight of the night style fights, but he was being fairly active too, and I'm sure that doesn't help his overall level of durability, especially throughout his career. And again, that's what I keep on coming back to in this fight. I don't know anybody who's confident in Frank Camacho this weekend, or tonight, I should say. Like, I haven't seen a single person this week tell me that Frank Camacho is going to go out there look like the Camacho of old and really be able to look good on the feet and on the mat. Because again, if Camacho went in there, tried to wrestle, use his submission ability, then yes, he probably has a great chance to win this fight. But Camacho's somebody who you hit once and he just sees red. It's like Fabricio Verdum when he fought Stipe. Gets hit once, sees red, rushes forward, gets knocked out. This probably won't happen in that exact same manner, but again, I don't trust Camacho to eat the power of Torres at all in this fight.
Yeah, it is a really, really tricky one. So Andrew's saying Camacho's going to pull a Frankie Edgar. Is that sit on a bench with old man Tony Ferguson with their
or
weird
win a
faces?
crazy fight 15 years ago?
Yeah, it is tough to tell. Joe saying, when are you ever confident Camacho when he fought the Sergeant, Nick Hine. Wow. Nobody ever forget. Yeah, for me, I do have Manuel Torres. I really do like the work rate. I like the accuracy of his shots, even though he is a wild man. I like what I've seen lately, but Entram Jim is kind of all over the place. And listen, it's Brandon Moreno, and I know he's not there anymore, but it's Brandon Moreno, and then it's everybody else out of that gym. It really is. So I'm eager to see Manuel Torres. The Mummy Cats, are you drinking a seltzer? Matt, Pure North seltzer. Pure Energy seltzer. Canadian.
Good.
Canadian. No sugar. So yeah, it is a seltzer. And everybody at work thinks I'm drinking booze, but it's not booze. It gives you the energy jolts. So Matt, we move into our next fight. Maybe we can get Pure North on board. We certainly do, or could use a sponsor. Matt, Katlyn Chookagian's taking on Amanda Ribas. This one up at 125 pounds. Everybody else that's not named Jessica Andrade or Valentina Shevchenko have a hard time doing much against Katlyn Chookagian. Can Amanda Ribas change that? I don't think so. I think Katlyn Chookagian wins the decision. A decision, and that's as far into the weeds as I go with this one.
I think Ribas could out-grapple Chookagian if she is able to get it on the mat. I know Chookagian has made improvements with her own grappling, but again, a lot of that is done from the top position, and we haven't seen much from her off of her back. So I do think there is a world where Amanda Ribas is able to go out there, use some kicks, get this fight to the mat early, and maybe she does have success, but I do agree with you in large part. Katlyn Chookagian has phenomenal footwork. And even at 135 pounds, she was able to have success with that footwork. Again, I keep on going back to the fact that she beat Irene Aldana at 135 pounds. And Aldana's a pretty good fighter, and I know that fight was a very long time ago, but still, you fought someone who is now considered a top contender, a weight class above you, so I still put quite a bit of stock into that win. And for Amanda Ribas, she is very well-rounded, and she's going to be someone who, whether it's at 115 or 125 pounds, she will be relevant in both of these weight classes. I just think she's one of those fighters who's very good, but a step shy of great. And for 125 pounds, I do think Katlyn Chookagian is the gatekeeper to greatness.
And Katlyn Chookagian, not known as a big power puncher. I think, her last win by finish is like 2016. And if you consider the way that Chookagian fights and the way that Ribas fights, Ribas almost has to get hit to get into a fight, but it's really, really weird. And she gets hit quite a bit. Obviously, Marina Rodriguez is a fight, but when Virna Jandiroba throws a clubbing overhand right, and you're there with your hands down by your sides, it's not a good look. So, again, for me, I do like Chookagian in this one. At Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 64% going with Katlyn Chookagian. Malone Hart hitting up the big super chat saying, sending you my energy for your Fight Night Spirit Ball. Dragon Ball Z reference.
Thank you, Malone Hart.
Malone Hart with a big super chat. MVP of the show today. Sorry to the Pounder, but big ups to the Allan boys.
Thank you, the Pounder, though. Thank you to both you guys.
But Malone Hart really supporting the chat. And if you can't hit up the super chat, there's almost 500 tuning in to an average Fight Night card. You can toss us a like. It takes 2 seconds, and there's under 100 likes. It takes about 2 seconds. So, again, Malone Hart, giant super chat. Not enough can be said. So, Matt, now we have to fire it up. We gotta really punch up. We gotta talk about a fight the people are excited about. We have this on our potential fight in the night screen. Davy Grant, his nickname's Dangerous. He comes to us out of Bishop Auckland, United Kingdom, and he's taking on Louis Smolka, a guy out of Team Oyama. Now, if Colin Oyama can coach Carlos Esparza to 2 strawweight championships, who the hell knows what he can do with Louis Smolka coming off a loss to Vince Morales. And Vince Morales is a bad man. And he's got a fight that just got booked, and I get excited about it. I like Morales' fight. But when you look at Smolka, he was able to ditch our silly little Fight Night Pick Smolka effect. Because yes, against Casey Kenny and many other fighters, Lewis would play jiu-jitsu. It was touch butt in the park with the weirdo. And he would get himself caught. But in his fight against Teco Quinones, he did that, did a little bit of an Angus Young up against the cage, ripped himself out of that bad spot, and ended up performing very, very well in that fight. So, Louis Smolka, it's a battle of hot and cold. And with Davy Grant, I bet he likes his tea hot, and he probably likes his
He's the type of guy to take the tea immediately off the stove and just start drinking it. Like Davy
I'm
Grant,
dangerous.
He's as tough as they come too, and that really does matter in this sport. For Louis Smolka, we've seen him finished a number of times at this point, and it's not by vicious power punchers in every single case. Like, Vince Morales is a good fighter, but I don't think he has exceptional punching power by any means. And for Davy Grant, yes, he lost Adrian Yanez in a pretty close fight. I thought Yanez won that fight, don't get me wrong, but again, it was a lot closer than I remembered. I did give Grant one of the 3 rounds. Again, it's not like he won, but still, to have a guy who was looked at as sort of being on his way out after getting his big shot against Marlon Vera, because that rematch against Vera was, hey, you want a big fight? You guys fought before and it was fun. Here's your chance. And he looked way better than I think most people expected in that matchup. And I think ever since then, we've all looked at Davy Grant in a slightly different way. It's, hey, you might not win every fight, but you're at least going to be you in every fight. And I like baseline Davy Grant more than the peaks and valleys of Louis Smolka. The worst version of Louis Smolka gets knocked out by Davy Grant round 1 or round 2. If Grant shows up Bangkok ready like he was against Jonathan Martinez, Louis Smolka's hitting the mat and probably quick. But this is the difference. I do think it's probably going to go to a decision, this is the last thing, just because I don't think we'll see that level of aggressiveness out of Davy Grant. I do think on the feet they're going to be a little bit more 1-for-1 with their striking. I just think Grant's going to pull away a little bit more with his overall volume and be a little bit more sound defensively.
I have a really hard time on this fight. I honestly do. And I mean, I look at the odds. There's a lot of people talking a lot of positives about Davy Grant. Minus 275 at open, minus 288 right now. Smoking a plus 232. If you feel confident with Davy Grant as a decent favorite, I don't know, man. I don't. I see a lot of people out there that are at Fight Night Picks over on the Instagram. 78% going with Davy Grant. Frosty the Snowman, happy fight day, gang. Loving that Phillies jersey. Have a Phillies soccer game tonight. Cheers to you all. Maybe I gotta start watching some American soccer. Maybe that's the next thing for me. Because I dabble every now and again. Tottenham, big dub over Arsenal, and Harry Kane lighting the lamp twice, and I'm pretty sure Sonny scored the other goal, but I just watched the highlights after the fact. So again, I do have Davy Grant in this one. I think he has a bit of a striking advantage, but if Smolka goes out there pitter-patter, you talked about his jiu-jitsu.
I don't think it's better than Davy Grant's, though. That's the problem. Like, Davy Grant was known as a grappler for a large portion of his career, and those aren't skills that just leave you immediately because we've seen this other version of you.
That much is true. Over 500 tuning in. The likes continue to come in, and we move into our co-main event of the evening between Ryan Superman Spann, a guy who probably doesn't like to be in crowds or ask questions at media day because, again, when he does his stare downs, he looks at the floor. When he does his media day, he's wearing sunglasses indoors. He's like Corey Hart in the 80s.
A pretty cool guy?
I guess. I mean, Robert Paul Champagne cool? Probably not. But he's taking on Ion Cutelaba, a guy who's uprooted life and gone to extreme couture, a guy who loves to wrestle and wrestle. Ryan Spann likes to submit guys. So this should be a very, very fun fight at light heavyweight while it lasts. But Ryan Spann doesn't take a shot very well, and Ion Cutelaba doesn't either. So there are powder kegs out there.
It's really weird. Isn't it funny how every time there's one of these, like, really jacked up power punchers, everybody thinks they probably don't have a chin. That's sort of the weakness everybody banks on. They're like, oh, but what if you hit them clean? Just like when Chimaev was doing really well, everyone was like, oh, just wait till he gets hit clean. Turns out, reacts pretty well, and he can still get into a really tough fight. But for Cutelaba, you're right. Like, he doesn't eat a shot all that well for a guy who does require the fight to be in the pocket to have a lot of success. And that's what I worry about him really in every single matchup. Like, yes, he's going to have more firepower than everybody he's against. But one shot his way could take him down. And that really does worry me anytime he's fighting a guy, even on the borderline of the top 15. Because for Cutelaba, I put him in the same category of like a Lord Michael Olashechuk. As where we could sell you the premium package and boy, you're going to think it's great. I could also sell you the bad package, though, and you're probably going to think this guy's just coming off Contender Series. I do think that we have seen some improvements out of Cutelaba, though, as of late. I do think he has figured out sort of how to fix his own Goldilocks zone with his cardio a little bit better. He's not too hot at the start of the fight, so he can burn a little bit longer as the fight goes on, and I think that will be important against a guy like Ryan Spann.
You do think that benefits him? I mean, you look at a hot start like Cutelaba when he took on Dustin Jacoby. I had it at 10-8. Did the judges all have it at 10-8? I did because he was all over him. His striking was great. His wrestling was great. And then he faded as the fight went on. And we've seen, again, a little bit of an improvement. His last fight, Extreme Couture. This fight, Extreme Couture. It's like Ryan Spann's teammate, Sam Hughes, who fights next weekend. She looked great coming out of Fortis MMA for that first camp. I love what I saw. I'm eager to see it against Elise Reed. But when I look at Ryan Spann, you talk about hot and cold performances. It's like it's a totally different fighter. Like when he took on Sam Alvey and Nogueira, it was like, what the hell? Like, is this Ryan Spann? And then you look at some other fights, like, wow, this guy's really good.
Do you know what I think Cutelab's big thing has been? I think he's MMA-ified his wrestling more. I just think
like
his
TJ Dillashaw.
A little bit, but like Cutelaba, you heard about his wrestling when he came to the UFC, but he was getting out grappled by guys. Again, I go back to the fact that Jared Cannonier was able to take him down a few times in their fight. And Cannonier is not some great wrestler by any means. Like, yes, he's a good defensive wrestler, especially at this stage of his career, but he's not a guy who can go out there and get a lot of offensive shots. I do think with his transition to Extreme Couture, and that is the important thing, a gym known for a lot of more traditional wrestlers in a sense, and developing those wrestlers, I think they have been able to take his more unorthodox and unique style of wrestling, and I think they've just been able to apply that a lot more to MMA. But I think that's a really good point you bring up, because maybe the best style for Cutelaba is just go at Ryan Spann, because he hasn't shown the ability to eat a big shot on the feet, and that's the thing. For Spann, he got knocked out by Carl Roberson, and that is a big point that people don't talk about enough. I know Roberson's a guy who has big power if he is able to hit you clean, and like you said, it was one of those weird positions a la Travis Brown.
Just like Johnny Walker did to Ryan Spann. It was the same position.
Exactly. I still don't look at Ryan Spann as being a guy who can eat multiple shots from Cutelaba. Maybe one, but not two, and definitely not three. And the last thing I'll say is, Spann's a guy who can get backed up, and that's really the big important thing about this fight. If Cutelaba gets him up against the cage and just starts unloading on him with combos, yes, Cutelaba might not be there in the third round, but it's like being slow and hitting home runs. You don't gotta be fast running around the base paths when you don't have to be fast to go around the base path. So maybe you're right. Maybe Cutelaba should turn up his aggression, but if anything, you've opened up two avenues for him to win by now. I think Cutelaba could take it late with his grappling and have some success, but maybe he could just show up a la Justin Gaethje in his first little run in the UFC, make this fight wild and get the quick knockout.
Fashion Cold Wars, this one's a hard pass for myself. Again, Ion Cutelaba could run across the cage like Marcin Prachnio did against Sam Alvey and get knocked out. Like, Cutelaba doesn't have the greatest chin, and for Ryan Spann, long-range straight weapons are the best way to beat Ion Cutelaba. Spann's got him. 66% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Cutelaba to get the win. So Matt, we'll move on to our main event of the evening. Ooh. Over 500 tuning in for the show. You folks are going to really enjoy Holly Holm versus Katlyn Vieira next weekend. But of course, Ponzinibbio, you've got, he's taking on Michel Pereira. Jailton Almeida's moving up to heavyweight, take on Parker Porter. Parker Porter! He's hot right now.
Is that the fight you never knew you needed?
I'm really excited about it. I mean, Parker Porter, for goodness sake, fought John Jones one time. So I'm really eager for that one. Chitty Bang Bang and Joe Kawani's taking on a very interesting Dusko Todorovic. So there's a lot of good fights next weekend. It's one of those cards that on paper, is it a 2 out of 5 on Fight Matrix? And is that less than most Fight Night cards?
Not to my Fight Matrix.
Yes, but I'm really excited about that one. Donald E. Guy sitting up the super chat. My favorite broskies. Can I get an early hot take on Pereira, Ponzinibbio?
I think Ponzinibbio looks more like the guy who fought Neil Magny than the guy who fought Jeff Neal. There's my early hot take.
I think Jeff Neal's got an interesting fight that just got booked, and I'm very excited about it. And I think Ponzinibbio wins that fight. But Matt, in this fight, Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic. It's a tale of what have you done for me lately. And for most people in the comments section this week, it was Alexander Rakic is going to grind this out. He's going to make it boring. He's going to wrestle. And you're going to hate this fight. And Jan Blachowicz gave up against Glover Teixeira. And to that I say, okay, let's go back one fight for each guy. Jan Blachowicz dominated Israel Adesanya to then ask if he wanted to pay him to be his bodyguard. I don't know if you saw that video. It was very weird. And it was also funny. Alexander Rakic, remember that fight against Anthony Smith where he's all over him, controlled him for like 12 minutes and just beat his head in? He
didn't beat his head in. He controlled him for 12 minutes.
That's kind of where I was going with it. Controlled that fight, and against Thiago Santos, fought a very cerebral fight. Didn't let things go like we saw him do when he, 30-24 Justin Ledet, or when he finished like he put Jimmy Manuel to sleep. But Alexander Rakic in the past, he's had some so-so fights, obviously winning, but so-so in terms of entertainment. And Jan Blachowicz has had poor takedown defense in some fights, like I pointed to, like when he fought Durkin.
In all of his fights.
Pat Cummins.
Jan Blachowicz has one very obvious weakness in his game. It's like fighting the Death Star when you're fighting Jan Blachowicz, okay? Not a lot of weaknesses, looks very scary from the outside, but there's that one little vent that if you can get that shot into, it'll blow the whole thing up. And that one little vent is his initial takedown defense good? Yeah, it's really good. Is his first move off his back good? It's okay. He has active legs. I don't think he has very active hands once he hits the ground. But that's the weird thing about Jan Blachowicz. It's weird when we talk about grappling and the strengths and weaknesses of some grapplers. Because if Jan gets on top of Alexander Rakic, oh my god, he's going to put a hurting on him. Like, he really does have great grappling from that top position. He showed it off against even Nikita Krylov, who is very up and down and maybe not the best example of, hey, he out-grappled this guy, so he's really good, but still.
How on board are you, in the fight between Krylov and Alexander Gustafsson?
I'm way more about it than I should be, but it's probably not going to be a great fight. But this is the thing. Jan Blachowicz does have good ground and pound. That's one of the check marks on your overall grappling. He has good offensive wrestling, good initial takedown defense, and good submissions. So if you just look at that, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, Jan Blachowicz is a really good grappler. But again, it's like playoffs in any sport. You got to go a little bit deeper, and you got to focus on everybody's weaknesses.
We're talking about playoffs?
We're talking about playoffs. And with Jan Blachowicz, when you do look at his weaknesses, he can't really get up off of the ground once he does get taken down. And this is a weird thing. Like, even Jacare Souza had a hard time getting back up to his feet against Jack Hermanson. I know that's a weird example, but it always stands out in my head because Jacare is one of the all-time great grapplers to ever come over to MMA. To be a really big guy, it's hard to get another really big guy off of you when you're flat on your back. It just kind of makes sense. And for Jan, I do think he is going to struggle if Rakic can get those offensive takedowns early. But the big thing I keep on going back to, and again, I think this is the most important thing in this whole entire fight, can Jan hurt Rakic early and make him more hesitant? Because Jan is by far the better striker offensively and even defensively. He carries his hands very, very high, and he doesn't get hit clean very often when he is on the feet. Again, when he rushes forward, he can get caught, but for the most part, when you're just standing in the pocket with a guy like Jan Blachowicz, he's going to be the one dictating those terms and who's winning them. With Rakic, if he gets the leg kick going, maybe. Jan Blachowicz is really good defensively with those. So then you look, can Rakic get into the boxing range and have some success? I think at that range he can get hurt and get hit. We've seen him get hurt before in some of his fights, so I do worry about him at boxing range. But again, I think his one strength with his wrestling and his overall ground control can just sort of nullify any of the small advantages Jan Blachowicz has and just sort of his more well-rounded game.
The one thing that I didn't think about at the start of the week, and I see a lot of people talking about it over there in the comment section, and this is got me on the right side of some picks, especially with some underdogs. And we're talking Thiago Santos here when he took on Glover Teixeira. It was the wonky knees, but then I go back.
I said exactly how that fight was going to go if you're going to give anyone credit
I listened to too many people when they were talking about Bryce Mitchell and his bruised up, bubbled up arm when he went out there and took on Edson Barboza. I take injuries into account a little bit too much sometimes or not enough. It really is a tough, tricky game to try and play around when you're playing Pong inside your head and you're all about the ones and the zeros. When I look at Jan Blachowicz, this fight was moved a couple of months in the future. Why?
Because of a neck injury.
Yeah, I don't like that. And the thoughts started creeping in my brain all week.
And that is really my question to you. Do you think Jan did have a full training camp for this fight, or do you think he's really just sort of relying on a lot of his initial training before he got hurt, and then he just sort of got back into shape before this fight?
I think he did, and Instagram photos could be deceiving.
I don't care about Instagram because you don't show the world the bad stuff.
Hear me out. No, but him training, him recently. Again, you could set your pictures out by a couple of months and then just start posting them. But again, Jan Blachowicz for this fight was a man in the mountains. He was in the freezing, in the cold, and so on and so forth. And he had a team around him getting him ready for this one. Was he running away from a black Mercedes-Benz and guys with like rat hats like George Costanza? It's a rat hat. It's not a raccoon. It's not. I'm going with Alexander Rakic in this fight. Again, I started thinking too much about the injuries for Blachowicz. I had him at the start of the week. I had this as a very, very close fight. I love what I've seen out of Rakic, and when I consider in the takedown defense of Jan career-wise, it's not great when you couple it with an injury and the fact that he's not the youngest man alive. And I heard somebody say it was Chael Sonnen throughout this week, which, again, take a giant grain of salt when you listen to poor Chael on the fights and the picks, but he did kind of touch on it. Champions that lose either look way better when they come out after they lost or way worse. And I see a lot of people saying Blachowicz is going to look a lot worse. I'm going to go with Alexander Rakic in this one, but I'm so nervous for this fight. I'm very excited for it.
It is going to be a really, really key fight for this whole weight division because there's a few guys right now at 205 who, again, have sort of that half claim to a title shot. Ankalaev has been winning lately, but I would argue he hasn't looked great as of late. Thiago Santos picked up a big win not that long ago against Johnny Walker. Again, not the best fight of all time, but he got back to his winning ways. Anthony Smith looked good. Paul Craig might be the most dangerous man to ever be in this weight class with his grappling. And for Rakic, this is somebody who I put a lot of stock into. I thought he was going to get up to a title shot, and then I almost completely jumped off the train because of his last 2 lackluster performances. I'm expecting big things out of this guy just with his whole career, so I would like to see a really dominant performance out of him. Maybe it would be able to set him up for that Glover title shot, but this should be a great fight.
Well, if you have a look in the overall votes here with the Fight Night picks, 51% going with Rakic. If you have a look at Instagram, I mean, what's that? 485 total votes here on YouTube, so we have less than that, slightly less. Over on Instagram, 51% going with Blachowicz. So you could call it a 50-50, everybody split, but it should be a fun one. So as you know with Fight Night Picks, we're going to go back down through the entire card. We're almost at the hour mark. We certainly appreciate you for tuning in. A like is always appreciated as well. So Matt, let's talk about the first fight on this card. Nick Maximov, big time super chat out there. Now Matt, Blues fan was asking for some top 3 most confident cards last weekend out of that super chat.
And I had the worst week of the year, but just because you donate a 10 as we go through, I'll let you know.
All right, Matt. So we will go with Nick Maximov, Andre Petroski. I have zero confidence that Nick Maximov wins this fight. I'm picking him to win it, but I think he's way too big of a favorite.
He might be way too big of a favorite, but the question is top 3 most confident picks, not top 3 most confident bets. I do like Nick Maximov quite a bit in this fight because, again, Petroski's not a guy who can win a fight for 15 minutes on the feet. So at some point, he's going to have to grapple, and I don't think he's at all the level of grappler Nick Maximov is, no matter how many faces Craig makes to my right.
Andre Petroski's a really good grappler.
That's fine.
Tatsuro Taira is also a very good grappler. I think he beats Carlos Candelario.
I agree with that.
All right, we go into our next one, Matt. Virna Jandiroba is a very good grappler, but I think Angela Hill beats her by decision.
This is a really close fight, and I myself am on the fence. And like Craig said, it's going to be decision either way, probably a split decision either way, which speaks to how close this fight's going to be. I have Virna just because I think she'll be able to get the takedown, but if she can't, she's probably getting lit up on the feet.
All right, Matt, we look at our next one. Michael Johnson against Allan Patrick. I've got the guy who dyed his beard and his hair and looked bad on the scales, Allan Patrick.
If Michael Johnson owned a time machine, then yes, he could bring the 2015 version of himself to today, and he would win this fight 10 times out of 10. But it's not happening. I like Allan Patrick.
Mike Ross saying that Hill looked bad last fight. She looked bad in the first round when she got dropped and held down by Lemos. Then she won the next 2 rounds convincingly. So there is that. Viviane Araujo taking on Andrea Lee. By the slimmest of margins, give me Lee.
This is another fight where we're going to learn a lot about both fighters. There is an odd amount of ranked fighters on this card, both of these fighters being ranked, so it is pretty important for the weight division. I do like Andrea Lee, though. I think she's the more well-rounded fighter in this matchup. But for Araujo, she could, let's say she is able to get, like, a big TKO win. Then maybe she is just, like, jumping into a title shot, you know? Because right now in this weight class, they're just looking for people to fight Valentina. So if Araujo can look really impressive, then maybe they'll do the unthinkable and just throw her into a title shot.
Clay talking about Allan Patrick and the weigh-ins. Craig Hart, appreciate the super chat. But Clay talking about, had Patrick until you saw the weigh-ins. You're going with Johnson now. I don't know what it is with these shoot-the-box guys. They go to the States, and then Charles Oliveira misses weight. Allan Patrick looks bad on the scales. And Allan Nascimento also looks like death. So both of us going with Andrea Lee. I have Allan Nascimento, even though his eyes are always very dark and so on and so forth. I still do have him. I think the striking advantage is going to play out for him in this. But again, once Hadley gets outstruck, he starts to try and close the distance, get the takedowns. If he can get it, he beats Nascimento. So again, I can continue to talk about this fight for days, but I have Nascimento. I think as an underdog, it's not too bad.
With Hadley, I always go back to what I saw to pass Sabatini. Yes, you can lose on the feet, but if you're that good at grappling and you just get the fight to the mat, then you can work through bad positions. And again, Sabatini I do think is a prime example for this, because go back to the Jamal Emmers fight. Jamal Emmers cracked him hard and really hurt him in that performance, but Sabatini was able to work through that and win by submission really shortly after. So maybe the fight won't go exactly like that one. I think it's going to be a really fun fight, but I have Hadley.
So we have K9. What are y'all's picks again? I hear y'all's thoughts, but I don't hear y'all making a pick. K9, we've been making the picks, bud. I've got Nascimento, you've got Hadley. Frank Camacho is taking on Manuel Torres. And I saw it earlier on, a good morning from Guam. I have Frank Camacho. The last name of the commenter was Torres, so you have to be somewhat torn on that one. That's got to be a bit of a brain buster. I have Manuel Torres, but I'm eager to see the return of Frank Camacho after such a long time away. Good opportunity for him to make some cheddar, and if he gets a win, double it.
Maybe Camacho can look better after the layoff. Again, I know the car accident is something that would cause a lot of concern, but again, Earl Spence Jr. got thrown from a car, and
that was disgusting.
It was really bad, but he's come back and looked really good. Andy Torres retina after that. And I'm not trying to compare bad things that have happened to people, but you get the idea. You can go through these really bad things and then come back if you do have the appropriate layoff and if you do look after yourself. It's just with Frank Camacho, I think once he gets hit in a lot of these fights, he does try to get into a brawl. And if he gets into a brawl against someone like Manuel Torres, who has great power from the outside and from the inside, I just don't think Frank Camacho's chin can keep up to that kind of a fight anymore.
All right, Matt, so we do move into it, and we have Katlyn Chookagian, K9, very confused by what happens on Fight Night Picks, where we make picks, and just picks. Katlyn Chookagian's taking on Amanda Ribas, and I have Katlyn Chookagian to win by decision.
I also think Chookagian's going to win by decision. It could be a close fight if Ribas is able to get it to the mat early, because again, Ribas is a very, very good grappler. She can threaten with submissions. I don't think she'll submit Chookagian, but I just think if she can threaten with enough on the ground, then she'll be able to get the control time, just get to the end of the round and win it. But the problem is, Chookagian's fought 5-round fights against some of the best fighters in the world. She's got phenomenal gas tanks. She can fight moving backwards. She could run a marathon moving backwards. So I like Katlyn Chookagian in this fight. One of my more confident picks.
Star Smith, 77, Leon Edwards' brother, looked awesome in his fight yesterday. What do you think, Craig? You know what I think?
I'm
that
sad.
In 7 days, my two idols both lost their fights. Shogun lost OSP and Lyoto got knocked out. And why didn't the referee jump in before a couple of those extra Fabian Edwards shots? I don't know. But
Fabian got a highlight for the reel, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, that much is true. Davy Grant is taking on Louis Smolka. I have Navy Davy Grant to get the win. It's a weird fight.
He's just a lot more durable. That's kind of what I'm coming down to. I don't know why that was
old man durability.
Louis Smolka has young man fragility then, because he can't really eat a shot, and I don't think he can out-grapple Davy Grant. That's really what Louis Smolka's fights come down to. Can he out-grapple his opponent? He's getting better on the feet, but for the most part, he's going to try to get the fight to the mat. Taking the fight to the mat against a guy like Davy Grant's not the best of ideas. He can threaten with submissions. He's very strong for the weight class too, so I do like Davy Grant in this fight.
All right, Matt, and then we move into the co-main event. Ryan Spann, Iwan Kutsalaba. Ryan Spann, big hitter, doesn't take shots very well. Iwan Kutsalaba throws hammers, doesn't get hit very well. I think he's a better wrestler. I have Iwan Kutsalaba to get the win.
Spann could catch him on the way in with a big shot, like you would say. He does have good strikes coming down the middle, but the problem is, if he's not able to land one of those initial strikes, Kutalaba is going to be on the inside of his range, making him pay for a lot of those. I think Kutalaba goes to the body, he'll have a ton of success, and even if he is just his normal headhunter self, he should probably be able to win by knockout.
Ramirez, Iwan's got some issues, dude. He's always a jerk at weigh-ins. Hope Spann gets it in the first, Matt. When I think of that, was it a Lou Gramm song or was it Foreigner? Is it Head Games?
I was born in 1998. Craig, at the tail end of it.
You're the Lou Gramm guy, but I think of that Luis Enrique.
I don't even know who Lou Gramm is. How am I a Lou Gramm guy?
He's the lead singer for Foreigner.
No, you're saying it like that's something I should know. Don't defend the point.
Either way, Iwan Kutsalaba did the walk across. He scared poor Luis Enrique da Silva. And Damari Sims hit up the super chat late this week. What was the FNP parlay? You hit up the super chat. I appreciate it. I have no FNP parlay. I'm done with the QMK parlay. They've just lost. Last 2 or 3 have lost, so I'm done with them. But Matt, again,
lesson to the kids: if you fail, just quit.
Yeah, well, I got to take a week off. I got to regroup. And Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic. This is the only fight that I switched the pick. I spent all week worrying about Jan's neck injury, so I do have Alexander Rakic.
A 48-year-old man with a stiff neck is going to be fighting a guy for 25 minutes. It's just, that's not a great thing to say in a vacuum, that's all. And against Rakic, I do think Rakic at one point was looked at as sort of, maybe not the golden goose, but I do think the UFC was trying to market him in a way to get him to the top really quick. But his lackluster performances have sort of halted his rise. I do expect him to have a really big performance tonight, and this is another one of my more confident picks. Not going to use that L word because we all know what happens when I say that. But Rakic on the feet with his kick should be able to have some success. I do worry about Blachowicz's ability to check leg kicks because he is really good at that. But if Rakic can go to the head, go to the body, use his wrestling, I think he'll have a lot of success.
That nose-to-nose weigh-in between those two was so weird.
I thought they were going to kiss like Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman.
Yeah, it was Head Games, 1979's biggest song in September. Foreigner.
Sorry I didn't know anything about a song that was made 21 years before I was born.
Come on. All right, so that is it. That is the card. Couple more likes. Well, +7, and we're up to 200. We certainly do appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody that hit up the Super Chat this week. And listen, we got a big-time card coming up next weekend, and you might not love the main event, but you did actually let us know what you wanted for the thumbnail. You've got the crazy, dude love. Hey! Mick Foley look to it between Chookagian and Vieta, but I know there's a lot of fights that we're looking forward to on that card.
It is a surprisingly deep fight night card. I know we both talked a lot about the co-main event with Santiago Ponzinibbio and Michel Pereira, just because that's a really fun fight in the welterweight division. Ponzinibbio is not someone who's far outside of the rankings, and Pereira's been kind of hot and cold throughout his UFC tenure, so I do feel like giving him a legitimate top-tier contender, maybe not contender, but a top-tier talent, will make a very entertaining fight on there. And like you said, Chidi Njokuani, this guy, if you missed his UFC debut where he knocked out Powerbar in all of half a second, you missed something pretty cool. I do think he could have a very fun career in the UFC, and if you are a Bellator fan too, you've definitely followed some of his career up until this point, so his fight against Dusko should be a really fun one
You've
too.
got Jailton Almeida, you've got Uros Medic, who people are just so down on after his last fight. You've got, what else? J Mart, your guy, taking on Vince Morales. There are a lot of fun fights, so make sure you tune in for that video dropping soon. As always, again, enjoy your Saturday, enjoy the fights, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it. Great show, everybody. Enjoy those fights.
But